Welcome to the History Uncovered, where forgotten chapters of human civilization come alive before your eyes. Today, we explore the strangest apocalypse prophecies that terrified ancient worlds. From mystical visions to cosmic warnings, join us until the end to discover how our ancestors confronted their deepest existential fears. First, the Babylonian cosmic collapse prophecy. The ancient city of Babylon stood majestically along the Euphrates River, its ziggurat towers piercing the heavens under star-filled Mesopotamian skies. Within the temple complex, priests in flowing white linen robes studied clay tablets inscribed with celestial observations and dire warnings. The year was approaching what they calculated as the cosmic alignment that would signal the world's unraveling into primordial chaos once more. King Nabonidus paced anxiously through the palace halls adorned with glazed blue tiles depicting mythological beasts and protective deities. His advisors had presented disturbing interpretations of recent astronomical phenomena that seemed to match ancient prophecies carved into temple foundations. The conjunction of planets visible from the observation tower suggested the gods were preparing to reverse creation itself completely. Throughout the city's narrow streets, lined with mud brick houses, merchants ceased their trading activities to participate in elaborate purification ceremonies. Families gathered their precious possessions, including bronze vessels, woven textiles, and clay figurines representing household gods, into sacred spaces. The markets that once bustled with traders from distant lands now echoed with chants and prayers carried on the warm desert wind. Temple priestesses wearing elaborate headdresses of silver and lapis lazuli performed ancient rituals before massive statues of Marduk and Ishtar. They offered precious incense from Arabia, honey from mountain regions, and grain from fertile fields to appease the cosmic forces. The smoke from countless offering braziers created a perpetual haze above the city that blended with clouds gathering ominously overhead. Scribes working in the royal archive frantically copied sacred texts onto fresh clay tablets to preserve knowledge beyond the prophesied catastrophe. Their reed styluses pressed cuneiform symbols into wet clay with practiced precision as oil lamps flickered in the underground chambers. These dedicated scholars believed their work might survive to guide whatever civilization emerged from the ruins of the current world. Engineers supervised the strengthening of the city walls using thousands of baked bricks brought from kilns operating day and night continuously. Workers in simple woolen tunics hauled materials through streets, while priests blessed each section of fortification with sacred water. The massive gates decorated with dragons and bulls and brilliant glazed tiles were reinforced against forces both earthly and divine. In the hanging gardens terraced above the palace grounds, astronomers maintained their vigil with instruments measuring celestial movements and planetary positions. They recorded observations on wax-covered wooden boards that would later be transferred to permanent clay tablets in the archives. Each night brought new calculations suggesting the prophesied moment drew inexorably closer despite all attempts at divine intervention. Common citizens gathered in public squares where storytellers recounted ancient flood myths and tales of previous world destructions survived by heroes. Children listened wide-eyed as elders described the chaos waters that existed before creation and might return to consume everything. These oral traditions passed through generations suddenly carried urgent relevance as cosmic signs multiplied around them all daily. When the calculated day of cosmic collapse finally arrived, the entire population assembled before the great ziggurat, watching the sky intently. The planets aligned precisely as predicted, yet the expected catastrophe never materialized beyond normal celestial movements and natural phenomena. Babylon continued thriving for centuries afterward, though the prophecy remained recorded in archives as a solemn reminder of humanity's persistent apocalyptic imagination. Second, the Egyptian Sun Death Oracle. Along the life-giving Nile River, where papyrus reeds swayed gently in the breeze, The great temples of Egypt stood as monuments to eternal divine order. In the sacred city of Heliopolis, priests dedicated to Ra gathered at dawn to witness what they feared might be the final sunrise. Their oracle had proclaimed the vision of the sun god's death that would plunge creation into eternal darkness forevermore. Pharaoh Amenhotep stood on the palace balcony wearing the double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt and ceremonial false beard. His golden collar necklace caught the uncertain light of a sunrise, obscured by unusual clouds that priests interpreted as ominous. The royal court assembled below in elaborate pleated linen garments, their faces painted with traditional kohl and green malachite cosmetics. Throughout the fertile valley, where farmers normally tended fields of wheat and barley, agricultural work ceased completely as the population focused on ritual. Villages constructed temporary shrines, decorated with lotus flowers and offerings of bread, beer, and roasted fowl for the departing sun deity. The rhythm of daily life that followed the Nile's predictable flooding cycles disrupted by fear of cosmic catastrophe approaching. High priests in leopard skin robes performed the sacred opening of the mouth ceremony on massive stone statues in darkened temple sanctuaries. They wielded ceremonial adzes and chisels, touching the carved lips of gods while reciting spells from ancient papyrus scrolls. Incense made from frankincense and myrrh filled the columned halls where hieroglyphic inscriptions covered every available surface completely. Noble families commissioned elaborate tomb preparations even more extensive than usual, decorating burial chambers with vivid paintings of the afterlife journey. Artists working by lamplight in underground chambers mixed pigments from ground minerals to create scenes of solar barks and protective deities. The nobility believed that if the sun died in this world, the afterlife might offer the only remaining realm of light. In the marketplaces of Memphis and Thebes, merchants traded frantically for amulets and magical protective objects carved from carnelian and turquoise. Craftsmen working in gold and silver created scarabs, ankhs, and wadjet eyes faster than their hands could manage the delicate work. Even the poorest farmers spent precious resources on simple clay talismans, blessed by local priests at makeshift altars erected everywhere. The sacred lake beside Karnak Temple became the site of continuous purification rituals as priests bathed repeatedly in its waters. They emerged to perform complex ceremonies involving the manipulation of mirrors to capture and preserve the sun's weakening rays. Massive pylons towering above cast long shadows across courtyards where thousands gathered to witness what they believed were the final days. Royal astronomers observing from temple rooftops tracked the sun's path with instruments calibrated according to ancient mathematical principles and astronomical tables. They noted slight variations in the solar disk's appearance and consulted star charts painted on the ceiling of sacred chambers. Each anomaly confirmed their worst fears that the oracle's prophecy approached its terrible fulfillment with each passing hour relentlessly. When the prophesied moment of solar death passed without the sun's extinction, collective relief swept through Egypt like the annual inundation. Celebrations erupted in every city as people realized the eternal cycle would continue, and Maat remained balanced despite the fears. The oracle's failure was diplomatically reinterpreted as the gods accepting Egypt's devotion, and life along the Nile resumed its timeless rhythm. Third, the Persian fire apocalypse vision. Across the vast Persian Empire, stretching from the Mediterranean to the Indus, Zoroastrian fire temples maintained eternal flames sacred to Ahura Mazda. In the holy city of Persepolis, with its magnificent palatial platforms and towering columns, Magi interpreted disturbing signs pointing toward Frashrukaredi. This final renovation would come not as gradual transformation, but as catastrophic conflagration consuming all existence in purifying flames completely. Emperor Darius assembled his council in the Grand Apadana Audience Hall, where relief carvings depicted tribute-bearing delegations from subject nations. The Magi presented their interpretation, wearing traditional white robes and distinctive Phrygian caps, while carrying sacred barsom bundles. Their astronomical calculations, combined with prophetic texts, suggested the cosmic battle between good and evil approached its apocalyptic climax soon. Throughout the empire's satrapies from Babylon to Bactria, fire priests intensified their daily rituals before blazing altars fed by specially prepared wood. They recited Avestan hymns while performing precise gestures over flames that must never be extinguished under any circumstances whatsoever. The sacred fire represented divine order itself, and its behavior lately showed troubling irregularities that wise men found deeply disturbing. In the royal treasury carved into the cliff sides of Nakshi Rustam, scribes updated records on clay tablets and parchment scrolls documenting preparations. Gold and silver accumulated for centuries was redistributed to temples for increased ritual offerings to strengthen the forces of light. Artisans crafted elaborate ceremonial objects, including ritual spoons, fire holders, and sacred vessels from precious metals with consummate skill. Persian warriors stationed along the empire's frontiers received orders to maintain extra vigilance against both earthly enemies and demonic forces. They polished their iron weapons and scale armor, while priests blessed military standards with purifying rituals involving fire and consecrated water. The standing army represented humanity's defense against chaos, and its readiness seemed paramount as apocalyptic signs multiplied everywhere daily. Common citizens in cities like Susa and Ekbatana modified their daily routines to include additional prayers and ritual purifications prescribed by priests. They wore sacred cords wrapped around their waists, symbolizing commitment to truth, good thoughts, and righteous deeds against encroaching darkness. Markets filled with vendors selling protective talismans inscribed with passages from holy texts in cuneiform and early Aramaic scripts. The famous royal road connecting Sardis to Susa saw increased traffic as pilgrims journeyed to major fire temples seeking divine protection. They traveled past way stations established every few parasangs, their caravans carrying offerings of livestock, grain, and precious incense. Along the route, they witnessed preparations as communities strengthened defenses against both foreign invasion and supernatural catastrophe approaching imminently. Astronomical observations from tower platforms revealed celestial phenomena that Magi interpreted according to complex Zoroastrian cosmological frameworks and ancient predictions. Comets, planetary conjunctions, and unusual stellar patterns all seemed to confirm that the material world approached its prophesied transformation. These learned men debated endlessly whether the coming fire would destroy or renew, consume or purify all creation completely. When the calculated time of the fire apocalypse passed without cosmic conflagration, the Magi reinterpreted their chronologies and astronomical calculations carefully. They concluded the prophecy remained valid, but required recalculation using different starting points in mythological time and cosmic cycles. The empire continued its magnificent rise to greater heights, though the expectation of eventual fiery renewal persisted in Zoroastrian thought. Fourth, the Mayan cyclical destruction belief. Deep in the rainforests of Mesoamerica, where sacred ceiba trees connected earth to heaven, the magnificent cities of the Maya flourished. At Tikal, Copan, and Palenque, pyramid temples rose above the jungle canopy as monuments to cosmic order and divine kinship. The priests studying intricate calendar systems calculated that the current world age approached its predetermined end according to ancient cycles. The divine king, dressed in elaborate jade jewelry, quetzal feather headdress, and jaguar pelt, sat enthroned in the palace overlooking the central plaza. Court astronomers presented their calculations recorded in folded bark paper codices filled with glyphs and numerical dot-bar notations indicating dates. Their sophisticated mathematical and astronomical knowledge revealed the approaching completion of the long, Count calendar cycle with apocalyptic implications profound. Throughout the city, stonemasons carved hieroglyphic inscriptions on stelae and temple facades commemorating this momentous transition between world ages. They depicted gods, kings, and cosmic battles using relief carving techniques passed through generations of skilled artisans and craftsmen. The limestone surfaces told stories of previous world destructions by flood, fire, and jaguars that devoured the sun itself. In the sacred ball court, where ritual games reenacted cosmic conflicts, players prepared for ceremonies believed to maintain universal balance. They donned protective padding made from cotton and leather, painted their bodies with symbolic designs using natural pigments. The rubber ball they struck represented the sun's movement through the underworld, and the game's outcome might influence cosmic forces. Temple priests climbed steep pyramid staircases, carrying offerings of copal incense, cacao, and sacred blood drawn from their own bodies. At summit shrines, they performed elaborate rituals before stone altars carved with serpents, gods, and astronomical symbols intricate beyond measure. The smoke from burning offerings rose toward the heavens, carrying prayers and petitions to deities who controlled creation's continuation. Common farmers living in thatched houses surrounding the ceremonial centers intensified their agricultural rituals in maize fields cleared from jungle growth. They planted sacred varieties of corn according to ceremonial calendar days, making offerings to earth spirits and rain gods. These subsistence farmers understood their crop success connected directly to maintaining cosmic order through proper ritual and moral behavior. Scribes working in palace schools trained young nobles in reading the complex hieroglyphic writing system recording history, astronomy, and prophecy. They ground mineral pigments to create inks for painting codices on bark paper coated with lime gesso surfaces. Their training included memorizing creation myths, describing previous world ages and the cosmic dramas that ended each epoch catastrophically. Merchants traveling between cities carried news of apocalyptic preparations along trade routes connecting distant kingdoms through the rainforest wilderness. They exchanged obsidian, jade, cacao, and quetzal feathers while discussing interpretations of calendar prophecies and ritual requirements. Regional variations in understanding the prophecy created confusion, but all agreed the current age approached some form of conclusion. When the calendar cycle completed without world destruction, the Maya reinterpreted the transition as marking a new beginning rather than an ending. Celebrations erupted as communities recognized the calendar would simply begin another grand cycle of time stretching into the distant future. The sophisticated civilization continued thriving for centuries more, their calendar wisdom preserved in stone, codices, and collective memory eternally. Fifth, the Roman eternal city's feared end. The magnificent city of Rome sprawled across 7 hills, its marble temples, forums, and aqueducts representing the pinnacle of ancient civilization. In the Senate House, where toga-clad patricians debated matters of state, disturbing Sibylline prophecies circulated predicting the eternal city's destruction. These ancient oracular texts, consulted only during gravest crises, seemed to predict Rome's apocalypse through specific signs now manifesting. Emperor Marcus Aurelius sat in philosophical contemplation within his palace, adorned with Greek sculptures and elaborate frescoes on every wall. The Stoic philosopher king grappled with reports from priests interpreting unusual omens, including deformed animal births and strange celestial phenomena. While his rational mind questioned supernatural predictions, his duty to Roman religion required proper attention to apocalyptic warnings appearing. Throughout the city's densely populated insula and grand domus residences, citizens discussed the prophecies in forums, bathhouses, and market squares. Merchants in the Forum Romanum beneath the Capitol Hill reduced their trading activities to focus on religious observances and protective rituals. The usually bustling commercial heart of the empire took on an atmosphere of anxious anticipation mixed with determined denial. Vestal virgins maintaining Rome's sacred eternal flame in their circular temple performed additional purification ceremonies with meticulous precision and devotion. These priestesses, drawn from noble families, wore distinctive white robes and elaborate hairstyles while carrying out rituals crucial to Rome's survival. Any extinction of their sacred fire would signal disaster, so they guarded it with even greater vigilance than normal. Military commanders stationed legions throughout the empire received orders to maintain readiness against barbarian invasions, potentially connected to prophesied catastrophe. Soldiers in segmented armor and red cloaks drilled constantly, sharpening their gladi and pilum, while centurions barked commands across training fields. The mighty Roman military represented civilization's bulwark against chaos, threatening from beyond the frontier and from the gods themselves. Engineering marvels, including the Pantheon, Colosseum, and elaborate aqueduct system, represented Roman confidence in eternal dominance and divine favor. Yet architects now consulted augurs before undertaking new construction projects to ensure they wouldn't accelerate prophesied doom through impious actions. The practical Romans balanced their engineering prowess with supernatural caution in these uncertain times of apocalyptic predictions. In temples dedicated to Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and countless other deities throughout the city, sacrificial smoke rose constantly. Priests in ceremonial robes examined animal entrails for omens, poured wine libations on altars, and led processions through streets. The polytheistic religion adapted by intensifying traditional practices while also incorporating foreign mystery cults promising salvation from cosmic destruction. Philosophers in colonnade-lined porticos debated whether Rome's potential destruction represented divine punishment for moral decay or simply natural cycles. Followers of various schools, including Stoicism, Epicureanism, and Neoplatonism, offered competing interpretations of apocalyptic prophecies and their significance. These intellectual discussions provided some citizens with rational frameworks for understanding irrational fears gripping the population increasingly. When the prophesied signs passed without Rome's destruction, the interpretation shifted to credit the proper performance of traditional rituals. The city continued as the empire's heart for centuries more, though the concept of Rome's potential end remained psychologically powerful. Eventually, that prophecy would prove accurate, but not in the manner or timeline the ancient oracles had suggested mysteriously. Thank you for journeying through history's strangest apocalypse prophecies with the History Uncovered. These ancient fears reveal timeless human concerns about existence and cosmic order that still resonate today profoundly. Please like, comment, and subscribe to explore more fascinating historical mysteries with us. Until next time, keep uncovering the remarkable stories of our shared past.